Well, the increasingly volatile situation in southern Afghanistan is the latest report, or the focus of the latest report by the Senlis Council. They say that the Taliban are entrenched in and around Kandahar. With full details, I'm joined by Senlis President and lead researcher, Norine MacDonald. She is in London. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
So tell me what's changed since your last report in southern Afghanistan. It sounds bleak.
Well, we've been doing research in southern Afghanistan, in particular Kandahar, in this last 5 or 6 weeks. And what we've seen on the ground there is that the Taliban have really become entrenched in the rural and district areas outside Kandahar city and outside Lashkargah city. And they're running parallel governments in a number of the districts. The concern we've got is that this means if the security situation doesn't change, the presidential elections that are meant to be held in a year will not be able to be held. There's not sufficient security in southern Afghanistan to carry out the elections.
Just to carry out the vote?
Absolutely not. I mean, the locals will not travel past the main city centers. We interviewed a lot of people who said that you really couldn't pay them enough to actually go out to the districts to be part of conducting the vote. They say they believe the Taliban will torture people who are engaged in the vote. And bringing democracy to Afghanistan, is one of the things that we've all been proud of. And if we don't change the security situation in southern Afghanistan to allow the presidential elections, it's really tantamount to letting the Taliban and Al-Qaeda take over southern Afghanistan again.
Well, let's take that and this new knowledge, I guess, and reflect it upon the Canadian situation right now. Very, very timely, as you probably know. The Prime Minister meeting with the Liberal leader yesterday. We were just discussing with our Ottawa bureau chief the chances of an election. He told us he's packing his bags. It's a 70% chance that there will be an election, and it will be called on the issue of Afghanistan, ostensibly Afghanistan, probably according to what we've heard on leadership, but nonetheless on Afghanistan. What do you think? I mean, Canadians pulling out of a security situation and making what sounds to be a bad situation worse, or are we left with no choice? Is it fruitless to take any other direction but to pull out?
Well, we believe that Canada should stay, and it's important to note that what we've said is, in fact, this dramatic deterioration in security is not the fault of Canada or the other 3 NATO countries, the US, the UK, and Holland, who are actually fighting in the south. It's a political dysfunction in NATO that means despite the unanimity of the NATO vote to go into Afghanistan and take on that job, there's really only 4 countries fighting there. So it's factually inaccurate to say that NATO is fighting in southern Afghanistan. There are only 4 countries, including Canada. So, we've been really part of the proper response to the situation. What we've said is we've got to recognize the political dysfunction in NATO and move away from the idea that NATO is going to secure Afghanistan, send the issue back to the UN Security Council where it all started, and expand to a NATO plus force in southern Afghanistan, and that's got to happen in the near future.
The Manley report recommended that Canadian troops stay if an additional 1,000 NATO troops were provided to the Kandahar region and those other countries outside of those 4 start doing more. Would that be enough in your mind?
Well, we've said that the entire troop force has to be doubled in southern Afghanistan, and it seems the political reality now that we have to accept is those other NATO countries are not with us on this mission. We've got to move back to a wider grouping into the rest of the international community to get the number of forces that would be necessary to secure the South. And the presidential elections are in a year, but that's not very much time, especially if we've got to involve the UN in some sort of process, because they're not known for moving fast. So that's why we've said this has got to start right away. We've got to acknowledge that NATO itself is not a reality in southern Afghanistan. It's just us 4 countries, and we've got to look for help elsewhere.
Ms. MacDonald, I have about 30 seconds, but I just need, I guess I'm looking for a glimmer of hope here in this report, and I think I might find it in Afghanis, in their feeling about us in advance of this or next year's election.
Well, there is some good news. Is when we were doing these interviews, Afghans were very interested in the idea of the elections. They've really embraced the idea of democracy. They were able to engage in naming a lot of other candidates from different ethnicities, and including 3 female candidates. So I've been living there for 3 years, and I myself was quite encouraged by the way that Afghans have really taken on the ideas of democracy. And what we need to do now is provide them with the security so that they can go ahead with their elections.
Very, very interesting. I'm glad we got to that last point, Ms. MacDonald. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.